Hey, broadcasting from the Big Island of Hawaii. This is Lock and Load Monday chat on UK gun laws versus US gun laws. And I did neglect to figure out that it's 3:30 in the morning in Glasgow, Scotland, where Fox Company Prepping is right now. Ron Swanson said he'd be here, but doesn't look like it. So we're going to talk about it for a while, and I posted some links that are pretty interesting. And maybe he'll wake up and come on. He has the link, and I'll tell you what he said in his email reply. So 1 second, let me hit one more button. All right, hit that button. So I was basically just reviewing what's happening in the UK right now, and having talked to some people and listened into a lot of chats on Fox Company Prepping out of the UK. They don't really think about it. Actually, what he actually told me was he knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who can get a bunch of guns. And so I hate to tell him how that worked when we have actual firearms dealers, and everything just dried up pretty quick after Sandy Hook, but ammo and guns. So anyway, there's this article. What they're doing in the UK is they're overhauling all of their gun laws. The main gun law is the 1968 Firearm Act, but there's going back to the 19th century, like in between 1842. I mean, well, basically, there's from the 1800s on, there's like 33 other acts, and not counting the Firearms Act of 1968, and that included that the Firearms Act, that one act included everything from 1903 to the present day, and there are so many little tiny changes and revisions over the years, where they took out a word or put in a phrase or took out a phrase. So there's an article in the Guardian that Joshua Rosenberg wrote, and I just think that the basic premise of, it's like that Europeans don't get is that like in the United States Declaration of Independence, it says that rights that he can defend, and if you're not allowed to defend your life, or you're supposed to rely on the police or the government to, then you really aren't free if you can't even do that. So basically, they've got this review, and I know that if it was in the U.S. and they were rewriting every firearms law, and just going to redo everything, and write one new. I mean, it would be a really big deal, and people would be talking about it. But nobody's really. He said that nobody's really too concerned about it because they don't think anything. That they don't really feel like they need to have these guns, or they're starting to think that maybe they will one day, but it's just, they don't even want police to own guns in the UK, a lot of the people. And so basically, what they want to redefine what a firearm is. They want to redefine the definition of legal. We were talking about that, or not legal, lethal. What is a lethal firearm, and what is an antique firearm? But there's this case that they're referring to. I posted some links inside the gunjournalist.com/hvs, and also posted them in the lobby. But there's a few cases that they're referring to, and this one there is called the Thorpe case. The court accepted that in order to determine whether a weapon is lethal, it is necessary to ask whether it is capable of causing injury from which death might result. And we were just saying, I mean, that could be anything. It could be a rock. It could be, if a bird flies into a plane engine, death could result from that. It could be a spoon. and so uh, and and they're talking about trying to. I'm reading the gun laws. I couldn't figure out what was banned. I mean, I was told that no semi-automatic rifles with centerfire cartridges are banned. Shotguns or uh, multi pump action shotguns are banned. Um, Semi-automatic pistols are banned. Revolvers are banned. So, but you're allowed to have like bolt action rifles or something. I couldn't. The law didn't make sense to me, but was really did make sense when some of the people that I were talking to there. Well, we don't need these weapons, to defend ourselves. Like they're saying, I'm really good with a crossbow, which, if you have multiple attackers, it has a slow rate of fire. Or all I need is I can legally own a 50 caliber bolt action rifle. So, how much better are you off than we are? But if you can't own, a revolver or a Glock 17 or any, semi-automatic anything, then it seems like I think part of the problem is when part of the problem is that I think in the American Bill of Rights, it's like they listed uh, freedom of speech and its constitutional rights and right to keep and bear arms, but those weren't there because they were written down in the Constitution. Those are rights that were there given by God before the Constitution. And the problem that I think America slightly got wrong is because we wanted to have separation of church and state, because when the Pilgrims came over, they were fleeing the religious tyranny of where, the Pope said, okay, this is the king, this is the official king, we authorize this person to rule you, and this is the official religion. And so when we had separation of church and states, I think some problems that we have here is we lost the good part of ethics and stuff that religion can teach you, but we got rid of having to be submit to orders of the Pope and shit like that, or the king. So, but in Britain, they don't. It's like they never had that separation, and they never understood that God gave you. The king didn't give you these rights. The Pope didn't. The king doesn't rule you. The Pope doesn't rule you. That you don't have. It's not. You don't get your rights from the king or the queen or whatever, or from the government. And I mean, if you just look at how things have unfolded with people not being allowed to hold guns in Europe, it would suggest that people should be allowed to own guns in Europe. And but and how far back you go with regard to separation of church and state. I think I mentioned before that, back in the days of Charlemagne, before even they had marriage was invented, he basically killed every Muslim he could get his hands on, just like ISIS is doing to Christians. But I mean, that was a very, very long time ago. But it's nothing new what they're doing, in Syria. And but one thing I will note is that, like, when Germany is taking in all these Syrian refugees, it's because they're They're not economic refugees. They're fleeing because if they want to live, they have to flee pretty much. They're fleeing a war zone, and the entire population of Europe was basically refugees after World War II. So that's why they're taking them. But getting back to how all this relates to firearms law. It just, reading all the stuff on the links that I linked, it's just pretty amazing how there's some pro firearms groups that are allowed to submit, but basically what happened is the commissioner of criminal law, Professor David, or I can't pronounce his name, Ormerod, whatever. Oh my God, what? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, he wrote this consultation, saying that everything has to be redone. But I don't see too much input from the public, and as a matter of fact, the public seems to have taken very little notice of it. And I know that if we were rewriting every law in the United States, the public would take really extreme notice of it. So, basically, let's see what he's saying. The current law has been subject to a great deal of criticism, in particular because there's a lack of coherence between the 34 different provisions. I couldn't even get any coherence out of the current law because there's so many modifications to it, and even the law as written just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I couldn't even tell what they're trying to ban. See, the law is difficult to find given that it's scattered across numerous statutes. So basically nobody knows what it really is. Key terms within the legislation have been left undefined, like, lethality, what is an antique weapon, and, having inactive guns that can be, if you have access to something that can make them active. And everybody has access on the internet,
That's the part that I found interesting, was when they were talking about the deactivated weapons. The guy who wrote the article in The Guardian was basically like, oh man, it's so scary, people can buy these guns and then, do a in-home gunsmithing type of thing and make them active again. And the way I see it, okay, why not allow that? And if that person then goes and uses it to hurt someone, friggin' throw the book at them. I don't understand this philosophy of banning tools. Why not just make it you get in way more trouble when you do something wrong? That seems to make sense to me. And if you don't do anything wrong, then you're in the clear.
Yeah, that's what I was really trying to get at when I was talking about the separation of church and state, and I think we need to get back to some teaching ethics, or I don't know how you separate church and state and still teach the teachings of the good parts, from the church or your temple or whichever your religion in. And because there's a lot of good stuff in there that you don't want to just throw away when you separate church and state. But getting back to guns again and how it's related is looking at the Guardian article. When the part that I mentioned the other night was, here's the quote. Quote, I am horrified by the ease with which people can be shot dead, not just in the United States, but also in the United Kingdom. Well, it might be easy to just technically pull a trigger and shoot a paper target, but when you're shooting a person is not easy. I mean, there's political, there's criminal, there's financial, there's moral, there's religious, there's a whole tonload of stuff that you don't just pull a trigger, on a person, and it's just that it's not just a question of the government trusting the people and the people trusting the government. In the United States, it's a God-given right, but we have a separation of church and state. So I just wish we could somehow. I think we could reduce gun crime even further if we just could somehow get back to teaching, some way with keeping the. I don't know how you do it. I have no idea how you do it, but keeping, because not everybody goes to Sunday school, not everybody goes to Torah school, not everybody goes to, and studies, the stuff, because people have lives and limitations, and this is the real world. But it's just if you learn all these ethics, and then pulling the trigger on another human being, it's not easy at all. And it's not easy at all. So I think that I don't know, maybe this guy, he says he never owned a gun, he doesn't want to own a gun, and he says, I quote, I will not keep a licensed weapon for personal protection, necessary though it may be in certain parts of the world, unquote. So, you know, I think the thing is that in Britain and a lot of Europe, because they're not haven't been allowed to own guns in so long, they just haven't. It's not something they thought through. Um, I know I went through most of my life without thinking it through, you know, uh, very, carefully, and it took a long time before I actually sat down and, actually really carefully figured out, you know, what did and did not make sense as far as firearm laws were, what would work and what wouldn't. I mean, so I think, basically people are going through their lives and you know, uh, not worrying about it. And which is a dangerous thing to do when they're rewriting everything, and they're going to rewrite the gun laws in 2016, going back to from the 1800s forward, you know. um, so, and I know if they did that again in the U.S., there would be this gigantic, huge groundswell of you know ranting and upset and
Well, that's kind of the part that's interesting too. Is what if we did just completely erase every single gun law and then start over? Is there a chance it could actually be better for us? That would be interesting. You'd get rid of the NFA, you'd get rid of all the other stuff, and then maybe that wouldn't get rewritten.
well, what they would have to well, here in America they would have to um, uh, repeal the laws. So Congress would have to unanimously, or just a simple majority, vote to repeal each law, and then the repeals would have to be signed by the president, and then it'd have to replace it with a new law. I mean, what do you think the chances are of that ever happening? But it seems to be pretty easy to do in Britain, apparently. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, how would you get the Congress? You can get 51% of the Congress to do it. Maybe, and the president. I don't know. It just seems that would be a major. That would be bigger than Obamacare. So anyway, let's see what else I have on this that I was reading. Yeah, let's see. After initial meetings with the stakeholders, there was wide agreement that the following issues with the law caused particular difficulties in practice: for the failure to define lethal, the failure to define component part, the failure to define antique, the failure to impose legal obligation that firearms be certified as being deactivated to an approved standard, and the failure of the law to keep pace with technological developments in relation to whether an imitation firearm is readily convertible. And basically, lethal barreled weapon. 1968 defines a firearm as a Firearms Act defines a firearm as a lethal barreled weapon. Lethality is therefore crucial in ascertaining whether something is a firearm or not. This legislation does not, however, specify what lethal means, or and how lethality ought to be determined in this context. The interpretation of this word has been left to the courts, and they have demonstrated a marked reluctance to specify with any degree of certainty how lethality ought to be determined. Right. So, and there's a few cases, one I mentioned before. And they talk about different approaches, removing the word lethal. I mean, you have to have a firearm certificate to own a firearm. I mean, I guess if you don't keep it, I mean, I, I don't get that, but I don't know. We have to register guns here in Hawaii, but I know we didn't used to in the past, back in the day. You just filled out your federal form, but you didn't have to register it in the state also. But I guess a lot of states do that now.
Yeah, but that's still different than having to actually have, a license to be able to even own a firearm.
They
There
have
are
that
some
in
states that do that,
Illinois.
but not
Illinois,
many.
Illinois has that FOID. Is that the same thing, or
I believe so. Of course, I think don't they need that to be able to buy ammo or something too?
uh, in Illinois? Yeah, I know they have restrictions on ammunition, but I'm not sure on stuff. All I know is I've been told what they can't have, and it's just it would be you know I can't imagine anywhere in America where you can't. I mean, except New York, New York City, where you wouldn't be allowed to buy a semi-automatic weapon. You know,
And certainly no one cares about New York laws.
I don't, as has been proven in other chats. Um, you know, it's I was watching Water's World on at the end of O'Reilly today, and it's just surprising that people don't know the national anthem. They don't know the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't know who was president during World War II. You know, I mean, one guy said they asked some people who was president during World War II, and one guy said Bush. Was just rolling on the floor. I mean, how's I guess they just aren't teaching these things in school anymore or something, or they just pass everybody no matter how dumb they are. I don't get it. Uh, anyway, we can always switch to knives versus guns. I know G Webs is crazy about that.
So are you saying you've just gone through all of your UK gun knowledge?
Well, let me look and see if anybody in the external is saying anything, or there is anybody in the external real quick. I haven't been watching. Yeah, not too many people, but
Because I personally don't know very much. I was hoping to learn something tonight, but without that guy from from there. I don't know if I have much more to add.
Okay, well, basically, I was just, surprised that people were like, well, UK gun laws are fine. We can still own but it just seems to me that they're rewriting everything, and nobody is, and I can't believe this is, well, I can use a crossbow. I'm very good with it, and that's good enough. I mean, who's going to EDC a crossbow? Who's going to EDC 50 caliber, uh,
Well, EDC isn't in their vocabulary. Like they don't even think about that.
I can't understand half the words they're saying on Fox Company Prepping because it's a bunch of UK guys and from all over the UK, but then they have all kinds of weird UK accents, and I don't understand all the slang, but they're really fun to listen to, and I like listening to them a lot. But it is 3:30 or whatever 4 in the morning, so I should have picked a different time, but this I guess when I always start. So anyway, I guess he'll hear about it and maybe watch this or not, and maybe he'll get back to me. And I know he just got back from a bushcraft outdoor camping thing last night. So, but yeah, well, I don't know. I think I've gone through everything. I mean, the only thing if I just screen shared the actual Firearms Act with everybody, it's just not only is it like incomprehensible, which is correct what they're saying. But there were so many changes to the legislation. They're like footnote. They have all these amendments in form of footnotes. It's just, I want to screen share this real quick, just this, so you can get what I'm talking about. Here, screen share this. So is that coming through? Can you see this? So basically, here's the law up here, weapons subject to general prohibition. And this is just one section of it. And you go down to all the amendments, and all this stuff. And is anybody supposed to figure this out?
Well, that's just like our laws. We have tons of stuff that's like a patchwork together. And especially when you add in over here, you have state that's different than federal. And sometimes you have city laws that are different than the state laws. So, I mean, that's the same thing. It's how many times do we talk about U.S. laws? That's different everywhere you go.
Yeah, but at least we can figure out why the U.S. state laws suck. And that was just one section that I clicked.
So, simplifying it is a good thing, but it would all depend on if they... Here's a real simple gun law. I'm not saying I support this, but no guns allowed. That's super simple. Everyone understands it. And I'm sure there are people that would like that law.
But what I don't get, the main thing that I don't get about British gun law is when they passed this in 1968 and said you're required to have a firearm certificate, did everybody queue up? And then when they said you can't have semi-automatic pistols or semi-automatic centerfire rifles anymore, did everybody queue up and turn them in? Like good British subjects? I mean, I can't imagine that happening in America. You could pass a law that said you have to turn in your semi-automatic pistols and semi-automatic rifles, and and you're a criminal if you don't. But would anybody turn them in? Or would they just move somewhere else and change their name or something? And
I think that there's historical evidence that a lot of people would
turn them in, or
even here in the U.S., right? Look at like the SAFE Act when you had to register. A lot of people are like, I'm not doing that. Screw that. Blah blah blah. But obviously, a handful of people did do it.
Well, there's sheeple everywhere.
Abiding person. I don't know. That's a tough philosophical question for myself. I haven't really figured out yet. If they come knocking on my door tomorrow, well, I probably would turn them in. I'm not going to lie. Because the ramifications getting caught with it, it's really worth.
That brings us back to Leonidas in Sparta, and I don't even know how to pronounce that, at Molon labe, which means having come, take, come, which basically means come and take it. It's just as if you saw 300, that's when the Persian said, Spartans, drop your weapons, and Leonidas says, Persians, come and take them, and so that's how far back that goes, and so we're back to Sparta, and the hot gates. That's how far we want to go all the way back to Sparta and the hot gates. Having come, take. And that's what it means, having come is Molon, the first part, and take, you take, but it means just, having come, take, is basically, what that means. So we're back to Sparta. As soon as they say no guns, and as soon as they say no center fire rifles, we're back to Sparta. I mean, how are we not back to Sparta?
Well, it depends on how many people say, oh, okay.
He only needed 300.
Right. Well, and like I said, I honestly don't know what I would do, because I would like to think a part of me would say that, okay, from my cold dead hands. But the other part of me does like living. I mean, that's kind of enjoyable. So.
Well,
I don't know.
the older you get, you know, and the more there's more behind you than in front of you. So, um, I could see some old guys not giving up their guns.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to talk tough, when it's not actually happening. Be like, oh yeah, fuck them. I'll do all this stuff. But
I never said that. I said I never even talked tough, but it would I'd think about it, you know, and it's not one of those, you know, easy decisions. But basically, you know, so if they rewrite, you know, this gun line, further do restrictions, you know, I mean, I know in the U.S. A lot of the stuff won't fly, and it's just, you know, I pretty much think it would be, you know, I mean, the choice is the Sparta choice, you know, the if all the if we have a Democratic Congress, a Democratic president, and Democratic left-wing liberal people on the Supreme Court, and they say you have to turn in all your guns because we don't trust anybody with a gun, regardless of criminal background or anything. I mean, you know,
right,
then
would you turn it in, or would you barricade yourself in your house and say, "Come and take it"?
no, I disappear into the jungle and say, "Come and take it." I'd make him come after me, I think, but wouldn't make it easy. But you know, really, you know, like Leonidas only needed 300, and he fought off, you know, millions. So um, of Persians, but he had a, you know, strategy to win. So, and we would probably lose, but it's the same philosophical thing. It's the same philosophical question: give up your freedom or die. You know, because the state doesn't, and accept that the state gives you these rights and not, and God didn't give you these rights. You know what's interesting is that the, you know, one reason like the Taliban were fighting the Soviet Union and took U.S. help to help fight the Soviet Union was because the Soviet Union, communism, there's no place for religion at all there, you know, so it's an atheistic political system, and so that's why they were fighting that. Uh, so, you know, basically, anyway, having read all this stuff that Leonidas, that 300, the Molon labe, or however you pronounce it, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing Greek. I never took that. I took German in high school and college at UCLA, but but yeah, that's why they print that on all the T-shirts and, you know, uh, and everything. So, I mean, how is it? I mean, do you agree that it's the same philosophical choice? I mean, you know, give up your freedom and or you lay down your weapons and give up your freedom or die, you know.
Right. No, that's exactly the conundrum that you're put in.
Yeah. So, uh, anyway, uh, I think all this happened when the British band was after, you know, another firearms massacre. So that's why they, after Sandy Hook, they were so sure that the U.S. would ban everything, and because that's what they did after a, you know, a school shooting in Britain, uh, and that's when they passed, you know, the 1968 Firearms Act. Some idiot shot a bunch of school kids again, and so anyway, if you are in Britain, the how you can submit until September 21st, 2015, you could submit your response to firearms at lawcommission.gsi.gov.uk. Firearms at lawcommission.gsi.gov.uk. and you can give them your 2 cents. Tell them what you think.
Tell them that you want all your guns back.
Tell them that the government doesn't. Thank you for writing your paper, but you don't have any right to tell us what to do. Or it just. I wish you guys had a Second Amendment. Is all I can say. And I just hope they uh, uh, grasp the meaning before September 21st, because it seems like that's the end of public participation. you know, I
Right.
mean, the Parliament may have something to say in 2016, but as far as actual public participation, other than writing your representative in Parliament, I think that's it. You're done on the
Well,
20.
they are going to have that half a day where they're going to have law enforcement, and then the people for like sportsman shooting are going to be able to discuss stuff. Could you imagine that if they invited like the Brady campaign and the NRA, and they had half a day to put their views out there, and then they were going to decide after that.
Just put them in like a mixed martial arts cage and let them go at it.
Well, that'd be easy. We'd end up just shooting them.
No, you got to make it fair. You got to give them BB guns. They're lethal weapons, right? According to the UK.
No, they get rape whistles. That's all they support.
Man, so should we switch? Have we covered this? We switch to knives versus guns. Since G Webs isn't here, I can tell him. Basically, I'll just give you my 2 cents really quick on the long and short on knives and guns and first aid and everything else. Is that you can't be one-dimensional in life. You have to be multi-dimensional, and you have to know what you know, and you have to know what you don't know, and you have to try and keep learning stuff. And when you learn a lot of stuff. I came on gun channels and I learned a few things I didn't know, and you know and the more you go shooting and learn and study, and you'll and practice, the more knowledge you gain. And it's the same thing with knives, with first aid. I put my first aid kit together. It's like, okay, here's what I don't know, here's what I need to learn. I don't have these skills. And then I got into knives. It's like, sharpening, different fighting styles, different ways to move, and it's all not, and it's all not unrelated, whether you're looking at Salat or Kali or different. You're learning how to move, you're learning how to fight, you're learning different things that could be of use to you. And so you can't just be one-dimensional, because guns don't solve most problems, and whether knives are faster than guns is a whole nother thing, but at close range. But it depends on the skill of the user, but you need to learn as many different things, like and whether you're preparing for the apocalypse or just getting through everyday life, you can't just be one-dimensional, and you need to know as many things as possible. So, and that's why, anyway, so I think we covered the UK, and that's my 2 cents on knives. You got anything else?
No, not really. I'm just along for the ride.
You're along for the ride. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. And if you guys on Fox Company Prepping and Man the Fuck Up Friday ever get to see this, let me know what you think. Tell us we're all crazy in America, or you want to move to America and have all the guns, or you just want our guns, as long as you don't. But if we gave you our guns, you'd give them to the government. So why would we give you our guns?
Ooh, slam.
You tried to take them before, but you guys didn't. But the redcoats did. But that was it. And we I think Obama forgave you for burning down the Capitol in the War of 1812, but burning down the White House. Well, I wasn't here, so you know, I'll just say I hope you guys can keep as many of your rights as possible. You don't, because I think you could easily get really fucked when this thing is all said and wrapped up. But anyway, so this has been a Monday Lock and Load, and thanks for listening. This is Hawaii Volcano Squad broadcasting from the Big Island, and y'all be cool. We're gone.